take a timeout.
Hi, I'm Brian Kenny, and welcome to ESPN Classic's Top 5 Reasons You Can't Blame, a series that takes a fresh look at sports personalities who are remembered largely for their mistakes, controversial moments, or questionable decisions. So many critics over the years have mounted the soapbox to chastise legendary coach Bob Knight for his outbursts on and off the court. But like Knight, we don't necessarily buy the prosecution's case. In this show, we'll give you our top 5 reasons why you can't blame Knight for his repeated outbursts. But first, let's review why Coach Knight is such a popular target.
Nobody knew that much about Bob Knight other than he came from this military background and he'd been a member of the Ohio State championship team.
Indiana has had just a tremendous history and tradition in basketball, and won the first NCAA championship in 1940, then again in 1953.
With Coach Knight coming to Indiana University and winning the championships that he did, he set a precedence for Indiana basketball and set a standard that has been hard to match.
In 1965, Knight began his head coaching career at West Point. Over 6 years, he compiled 102 victories as his cadets gained bids to 4 national invitation tournaments and led the nation in defense 3 times. The formula for his success was, in a word, toughness.
He brought Army basketball to levels that it had never been before and to which it may never be again.
From the Point's halls of discipline, Knight went to Indiana in 1971 and began employing measures more familiar to a boot camp than a Big Ten college. A gritty man-to-man defense became the basis of the Hoosiers' game.
That's why everybody was immediately swept away by Bob Knight. They had this very tough team. They used to pick you up in Jasper and guard you all the way to Martinsville.
In his 5th season, Knight's military regiment had transformed Indiana into the best team in the nation.
To have a national championship where you go undefeated an entire season in 2 years of only losing 1 game, that's a tremendous accomplishment.
But with success bloomed a bigger-than-life personality as complex as it was combustible.
The Indianapolis Star ran a picture of Knight in full rage, yanking poor old Jimmy Wisman off the floor. It was perhaps the first real example of the fact that there was this other side of his personality that wasn't as likable.
He's like a movie star. Whatever he does, he gets magnified.
Bobby Knight, the Indiana basketball coach, was involved in controversy again today. Knight, coach of the U.S. basketball team in the Pan American Games, had a scuffle with a local policeman.
The '81 Final Four was the Final Four where Knight supposedly threw the LSU fan in a garbage can.
If it happens again tomorrow, I'll be wrong again tomorrow.
I think he has warped the truth so much in all these incidents that he probably thinks he's telling the truth when he's really not.
Excellent free throw shooter will have the honors shooting the technicals. Looky here. Bobby Knight just threw his chair clear across the free throw lane.
After he threw that chair, that was like, people would say, hey, he's gone far enough.
Speaking to the 2, and he hits the telephone over on the scorer's table.
There's no question about his coaching ability. Let's set that straight.
For a 15, 20-year stretch, Bobby Knight was the best basketball coach, pro or college, we've ever seen. How can you deny that?
The Hoosiers have won the national championship!
But also, how can you deny the guy's a real butthole? I think we've seen plenty of examples of that.
I don't think you can say that the end justifies the means.
They bring the Russians over here when the wall is still up and everything else. And who makes a horse's ass out of himself in that game?
Knight was thrown out of the game. He refused to leave, but eventually said if he had to go, the Hoosier lineup would go with him.
I think we may have to lock the man up. He's going off the deep end.
Bobby Knight is coaching out of probably a rather egocentric place in the sense that when he's cussing out his players, it's all about him.
I'm tired of this shit. I'm sick and tired of an 8-10 record. I'm tired of losing to Purdue. I'm not here to around this week. might be, but I'm not.
I wanted to quit every year I played for him. Matter of fact, my junior year, Coach Knight said, "Why don't you quit?"
He kicked us out of practice all the time, you know. If you weren't giving 100%, you didn't come prepared that day. Sometimes he would say, well, you on your period today, AJ?
He's the most reprehensible teacher-coach of my generation. There's nothing more to be said other than that he's a brute and he's an arrogant pig.
The hitting, the grabbing, the headbutting, the kicking, the choking, those things are beyond discipline.
Whether they're the sports information director or the TV announcer or the sports writer that covers the team, I think he revels in the fact that he makes their life hell.
I'll handle this the way I want to handle it now that I'm here. You it up to begin with. Now just sit there or leave. I don't give a what you do.
When I look at what goes on with Bob Knight, I see negativity. I see oppressive, abusive behavior.
Well, Jesus, what the expect me to do?
I see authority run amok. I see self-promotion.
Because these incidents continue to pile up, pro-Knight people started to go the other way and say, look, why does this always happen to him?
In 2000, after nearly 3 decades marked largely by victory, glory, and volatility, Knight came under heavy fire, including snipes from some of his players.
Indiana's practices are a pretty secretive thing, but now we're taken inside. We get to see the videotape, you know, and watching a coach walk up and grab a player by the neck. You know, that's inexcusable.
I've told him many a time that I felt that some of the things he did were off base. You have no right to put a hand on anybody. You have no right. I don't care who you are.
Any coach who lays a hand on a player doesn't deserve to be coaching.
Bobby Knight was accused of grabbing the arm of a student and berating him, a charge that he denies.
When he grabbed you, were you immediately scared?
Yeah, I was. He's a big guy.
I notified him that he was being removed as basketball coach, effective immediately.
I just try to think, you know, where it went wrong and try to put the blame somewhere, but it just seemed like there was just nowhere to put it.
This is without question the most comfortable red sweater I've had on in 6 years. I can't tell you.
In 2001, after a year away from coaching, Knight resurfaced on the college hardwood, this time in a culture historically more tolerant of his hair-trigger temper.
Texas Tech basketball coach Bob Knight got involved in a verbal altercation with school chancellor David Smith on Monday.
Who knows when the next explosion will occur, and Texas Tech has brought it on themselves.
That is an absolute crock of bullshit. You know, you f***ing people in the news media, all of you f***ers, dwell on some negative piece of bullshit like that, and I don't know how Steve feels about it, but it just f***ing pisses me off. And you don't have to bleep one single f***ing word of this.
Even if you just had the mute button on, you saw Bob Knight's frequent fits of rage. Before we give you our top 5 reasons why you can't blame Bob Knight, here's a few reasons that didn't make the short list. We call them the best of the rest. Referees. Their fallibility often lit Knight's fuse.
I would say we all make mistakes. So in that respect, I could say, yes, you can blame the officials on occasion.
I had been ejected from a game for going out on the floor to check with an injured player.
They got a guy down. What is he doing? Valentine just called a technical on Bob Knight, and he's being told that Luke Record is down. What is he doing?
Here's a coach in a critical game ejected from the game for following the rules of the game.
Bob has the most thorough knowledge of the rules and how they should be applied. Some officials just refuse to listen, plain and simple.
And Valentine was sticking with what he called.
Another best of the rest, Woody Hayes. The passionate Ohio State football coach was in his prime when Knight was playing basketball for the Buckeyes.
Woody throws his clipboard. Woody hits a football player. Bob Knight throws a chair across the court. I suppose you could draw an analogy, the Ohio State connection being one of them. They're both from Ohio.
I always found him willing to listen, ask him a question. He always had a really good answer. I had a really, really good relationship with Woody.
They're absolutely a lot alike. He'd go over to Woody's spring practices and observe Woody, and he'd sit on coaches' meetings with him. And Woody liked Bobby.
West Point. Its culture of discipline turned Knight into a martinet.
The military environment at West Point had a deep effect on him. If somebody said jump, you said how high, and then you jumped as high as you could.
His preparing his players to compete for the academy was much like preparing the students at the academy to go to war.
West Point never left Bobby Knight. Some of that is very good. But because of the superiority that at times the service academies can breed into their graduates, you get another side where you can't really be wrong.
Knight's years at West Point stiffened him toward anyone who rejected his authority.
Half of these kids have never heard the word no anymore, you know? No, you can't stay out past 10 o'clock. No, you're not going to eat that food. No, you can't have the car tonight.
Well, Jimmy doesn't have to be in at 10 o'clock. Why do I have to be in at 10 o'clock? Well, the main reason, Johnny, that you have to be in at 10 o'clock is because, damn it, I tell you to be in at 10 o'clock.
And he went off like a Roman candle or whatever. I think I could probably understand that better than anybody because I did the same thing. You are a dictator. This is not a democracy here.
Did reason number 5 suit you? If not, try this one on for size. Reason number 4.
Scared straight. Knight's incendiary temper served to keep his players out of trouble and in good academic standing. He also touched the students who attended his class in coaching basketball.
The very first day of class, I say, I want you to write down the 2 best teachers you've ever had. Now, beside those 2 teachers, write down the 2 most demanding teachers, the 2 that got the most out of you, the 2 that you were really scared not to screw up anything with. Same 2 teachers almost all the time. So kids understand the benefits of demand.
People know that his players graduate, that he insists that they go to class. He even has a list of professors on the campus he doesn't want his players to take classes from because he thinks they're too easy.
Damon Bailey and I were roommates our freshman year. Well, our first 2 weeks of college, we didn't go to class. And we thought, this is great. We got, 300, 400 students per class. Met some girls that take notes for you. So we're like, this is great. We get called in the office. I mean, he ripped into us, and we ran till he actually threw up the next day. From there on out, we made sure we went to class.
He was on me because my verbal skills were bad, and he expected me to read more. So he'd make me come out to his house, and he'd give me books, and he would make me read.
Those people who thought he was doing the wrong thing got this thing a little screwed up because he was the one who made certain that a kid spoke correctly. He was the one that made sure a kid was prepared when he left him. The kid didn't always like it, but I didn't always like what my best teacher said to me either.
Teaching basketball, but yet he was also teaching you how to handle life situations.
If you buy into a system and you buy into the idea, I want you to be better than what you want to be, you're going to be successful in either winning games or when you get out in life.
He wins. Thriving within Knight's dark fire is a tactical and motivational genius who has won 3 NCAA championships, 11 Big Ten titles, and 4 Coach of the Year awards.
Whenever I think of Coach Knight, I don't think of him throwing a chair. I think of him winning.
He is able to get more out of the talent that he has and is not as good as some of the other top programs than any other coach in the country.
Talk to your feet. Tell your feet to get your ass there.
Case in point, he's out of it for 1 year. He lands in Lubbock, Texas. In men's basketball, they've had very few successes at Texas Tech, and all he does is start the year 13-1. He's incredible. He's a winner.
Lubbock will be the toast of basketball tonight. Biggest win of his first year yet.
When he puts the team in a breakdown drill, he can stop a sequence, step in, make a salient point to his team, and get them playing faster than any coach I've seen.
You've got to go into him, and you've got to get your butt into it. You got to hit him. He is not going to hit you.
And then turn around, go down to the other end, and know exactly what had happened and make the exactly right point at the other end.
Spacing on offense, position on defense. Let's think.
There may not have been a person that could get a team
to do exactly what he wants as much as Bob Knight.
He has a better idea of what he's doing than most people think, and that's kind of what I think he likes, keeping people off balance.
He was great at keeping the distraction and attention to him and off his players, so all his players had to think about was winning basketball games.
The last part of this is to make sure the fans get in. That was to get the fans in.
Winning cures all problems, so you didn't hear that negative stuff then.
Have we begun to change your mind yet? If not, take a look at reason number 2.
Indiana University, the school and the entire hoops-crazed state nurtured Knight's peccadillos.
The university and the people around him are at fault without question. We see the same thing in politics today.
Athletic department officials don't seem real concerned about the whole thing. In fact, they haven't even talked to Coach Knight yet. And they say even when they do, there will be no action taken against him.
I used to refer to it as the Bloomington bunker because anytime there would be an incident, there would be people in Bloomington diving to get in that bunker. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil.
A lot of people told him what he wanted to hear. And I think his intimidating ways somehow, maybe his close friends didn't tell him as much, hey, you got to change some aspects of your life.
In 1987, to keep him, when he was wooed after the national championship, the school offered him total control of the basketball program.
Coach Knight did have that provision in his contract. Sometimes he had the unrestricted right to do things with respect to the men's basketball program.
That total control that was granted him created an atmosphere where there were few people that could say, hey, Bob, back up. This isn't right.
He had that incident in which he choked Neil Reed or put his hands around Neil Reed's throat. Now, the interesting thing was, when it first came out, it didn't stick at all.
That just shows that you have not developed into a man, and I think that's the main reason why this guy, Neil Reed, is coming out with these statements.
All of those lackeys at Indiana just fell right in line and said, didn't happen, didn't happen, didn't happen.
Indiana University and the state of Indiana created a monster. There's no doubt about that, and they wouldn't have created it if he wasn't as successful. It's the old sports story.
We love the show.
In my entire adult life, I've never used the expression game face, so I have no idea what it means or what you're supposed to do.
He's the kind of guy that you walk into the arena and no matter what you do, you have to remind yourself to stop looking at him and watch the game.
Bob Knight is on fire. He's all the way down at the baseline screaming at one of the referees.
Let's face it, that's what makes him so fascinating. The fact that all this attention is focused on him is because of these huge swings in behavior.
Knight is furious.
It's one of the reasons that a book about him was atop the bestseller list for weeks.
Beyond a bestseller, Knight's journey has generated a television movie, a reality series, and action dolls, and garnered him commercial endorsements and cameo roles in feature films. But there is nothing quite as exhilarating as Knight holding forth in a live press conference.
I never carry a gun with me. If I've ever shot a kid, I'd be scared to play for me. If I walked out there and I'm saying, boy, that son of a bitch shot 3 guys last year.
I think Bob Knight gets a genuine kick out of it as well. Sometimes he's doing a parody on the theater of the absurd.
You got to sink the tip and get it wet. I get this. You don't mind if I prepare for practice here while we talk, do you?
I think he has fun kind of poking or twisting or digging the media.
Chair's broken. That's the furthest I've thrown a chair in a long time.
I remember he would just rip into it. He would just be furious, ripping into official, and then as soon as he'd get back to the huddle, he just completely, you realized it was all a show.
He creates great scenes, and we critique. The same way that a movie critic goes to a bad movie and critiques.
I would give Bob Knight's career 2 thumbs up. I'd actually give his tantrums 2 big thumbs up, because let's face it.
Get that sign and put it down!
It's the fact that he has these meltdowns that makes him a legend.
I think the hypocrisy is that we as a society like to create our heroes. You build them up just so you can tear them down. You cannot blame him for continuing his actions because we keep watching.
When my time on earth is gone,
and my activities here are past, I want they bury me upside down and my critics can kiss my ass.
Well, there you have it. Maybe we've adjusted your opinion, maybe not. But hopefully we've made you think about Bob Knight in a slightly different light. I'm Brian Kenny. Thanks for joining us.
My only criticism of the Bob Knight part in anger management is we didn't get enough of Bob Knight. It was a great performance. I mean, who better to play Bob Knight than Bobby Knight? But there was just this little teeny piece. I wanted to see more of Bobby Knight.